Good morning, Apex University. My name is Dan and I'll be your coach for today. Now, for the last couple years, getting better at FPS games and teaching other people how to do it has been an absolute passion of mine. But never in any of those years would I have expected a community this big and supportive to come out and be interested in what I do. So I wanted to start off Season 6 by just saying thank you. Because there's way too many of you now for me to coach one-on-one, I've decided to make a series of weekly videos where we go through the steps it takes to improve as quickly as possible. Sadly, as with many things you learn in life, a little bit of prep work is required, because when you apply for a coaching session, the first thing I think of you is to answer some basic questions. These questions will vary based on the game I'm coaching, but the first step to success is always the same. In order to figure out how to most effectively reach your goal, well, we have to determine what that goal is. You see, if you're a new player trying to learn the game, it's probably going to be a waste of your time to overanalyze tournament footage and try to use a pro player's experience to improve. You'll likely not notice or even misinterpret a lot of the decisions you see a professional player make, and it won't reflect the situations that you need to work on. Similarly, an aspiring pro player trying to qualify for the next tournament probably shouldn't waste too much time practicing their aim in pubs. It might be decent for a warm-up round, but it doesn't actually bring them any closer to their goal. They need to be working on things that they haven't already mastered that are going to help them and prepare them for the opponents they're actually about to face. So what you want to keep in mind during this first step is that you're looking for a long-term goal. Not something you're attempting to improve today, but rather a point of reference in the future where you can confidently say that you've improved. Some common long-term goals include reaching a specific rank, qualifying for a team, or specific competitive results. It doesn't really matter if the goal seems very far or difficult, like let's say going from silver to masters. It may take a long time, but it's simply about having a solid point of reference. A good long-term goal reflects that you've improved at the game. Now, bad goals or bad metrics are the easiest way to end up wasting time and plateauing in skill level, or if done for too long, even worse, building bad habits. Bad goals are metrics that don't accurately reflect whether you're improving. So the most common one that I've seen amongst Apex coaches is people over-focusing their kill-death ratio. Kill-death ratio is a metric that is influenced more by playstyle than actual improvement, so this leads to ineffective practice. If your goal is improving your KDR, then taking difficult fights isn't really worth it, because you'll likely die. Playing ranked won't be smart once you reach platinum, because pubs will get you more kills. You also probably wouldn't attempt a very risky rescue mission for a teammate's banner in order to clutch a game, and all of these things would lead to a worse KDR, but they would help you improve as a player. So now that we've got a long-term goal, we've got something that we can structure our practice around, but how much time do I actually expect you to invest in order to reach it? Well, when it comes to FPS games, and especially mechanical skills such as aim, movement, visual acuity or reaction time, consistent daily practice is key to improving as quickly as possible. If there's one single thing that every one of my students has in common, it's that they play every day that they can. The amount that they play and their level of competitiveness is vastly different, but daily practice is the golden rule to consistent improvement. Now, for those of you that play a decent amount already, how you spend your time is more important than how much time you spend. If you're playing more than 2 hours per day, then forcing yourself to play more often is generally not recommended. Play as much as you can and play as much as you enjoy, but focus on spending your time well. If you spend your time well and you make good daily progress, that's often what motivates people to dedicate more of their schedule to the game when they can. Forcing playtime when that time is spent practicing ineffectively and not really getting any results or being fatigued is probably the most common cause for player burnout, so that's something you want to avoid. Now, the minimum I would personally recommend anybody to try and play per day if I'm coaching them to ensure that they can improve quickly is definitely 2 hours. Now, missing a day every now and then or having less time due to family or work or simply not feeling like it, that's totally fine. But you do want to try and reach those 2 hours as many days as possible to improve consistently and quickly. Now, if your schedule doesn't permit you to hit about 2 hours of playtime per day on average, it might be difficult to improve at a significantly faster rate than the player base around you. You'll still be improving, but it'll be difficult to catch up with other players that are simply putting in more time. Although it's still totally possible if you spend your time well. Please keep in mind that maintaining the skill level you have is much less time consuming than actually improving. Once you've hit your goal, you can cut down the amount of hours per day significantly and just enjoy how much you've improved. Now, what if you've got more hours a day to spend? What if gaming is your main hobby? You're trying to be competitive about it, or as many of us, due to the pandemic, you're just stuck at home and have nothing better to do. Well, the quality of practice, especially after the first couple hours when you start tiring out, differs highly per individual. But the quality of those hours, especially as you start getting a little bit fatigued, is improved insanely by reviewing your games well, taking breaks, and knowing which game modes to play. You need to challenge yourself properly. Now, setting all of these things up properly for you specifically, your skill level, your goals, and your schedule is something that we're going to have to look at deeper in subsequent coaching sessions. But for now, you might be wondering, why is the amount you play per day so important, and why is not any amount of playtime whenever you happen to have time good enough? Well, aim's a fine motor skill, so when you wake up, the muscles in your hands and eyes, they're literally cold, as in they've been stagnant all night, and by using them you increase blood flow and muscle temperature. By stretching them you increase their range of motion. So when you're warming up in game, well, you're actually quite literally warming up the muscles that you're asking your body to use. Especially as a newer player, warming up every day can take quite some time before you're really subconsciously performing at your current skill level. Now, the time you need to warm up does become faster and faster as you become more experienced and you play more per day. So when I play 6 or more hours a day consistently, I always feel ready to jump in a game and aim without thinking about it. But when I play 2, maybe 3 hours a day, I definitely notice that I need a little bit of time before I can consistently perform at the skill level I'm used to. The reason this matters is because while you're warming up, you're barely improving, if at all, at least mechanically. However, a much more important reason to play every day than making your warm-up process faster is preventing rust. Whenever you stop playing the game for a prolonged period, you stop activating, maintaining, and developing the physical and mental skills that you're trying to improve. Over time, this leads to degradation of the quality of the skills that you already have. So playing enough every day to warm up and perform comfortably at the skill level you're at right now prevents the skills that you've built up previously from rusting and deteriorating. Now, how much time you can dedicate per day after warming up is not going to drastically change how much you improve per hour. But of course, putting in more hours a day will lead to needing far fewer days to reach the same level of experience. Now keep in mind, diminishing returns will set in eventually, especially when talking about purely grinding the game for hours on end. Now typically this isn't seen until 3 to 6 hours for an average player, but it's extremely dependent on the player and their mental state. Things such as aim fatigue, choice fatigue and autopiloting will make the later hours of a long nightly session probably a lot less effective than your first hours fresh into the day. But as long as you avoid building bad habits, you should be improving for every extra hour you put in, as long as you're practicing decent, challenging things. So now that we know how many hours a day you're trying to dedicate to achieving your goal, how quickly you get there is purely reliant on how effectively you spent that time. Now, to improve as quickly as possible, it is important to challenge yourself, but not too much. See, if the exercise you're performing takes absolutely no effort, like weightlifting with a newspaper, you won't gain any noticeable improvement. But equally, if you want to become a Masters player and you're currently in Silver, you can jump into Masters lobbies instantly, but it will lead to such a severe ass whipping that you won't have space to improve effectively at all. You want to be challenged enough to be punished for mistakes, but rewarded when you don't make them. To do this, the goal that we've established at the start needs to be split up into small, achievable challenges that you can do for the week or for the day that are consistently becoming more difficult as you get better. This is why grinding ranked matchmaking generally makes players improve significantly faster than casual game modes at honestly most game genres, because as you get better, so do the enemies. The challenge rises with you. And similarly, if you spend a significant amount of your time as a diamond player smurfing with your friends in gold and stomping on people, then not only are you not being properly challenged, so not improving as fast as you could, you're also being rewarded for doing things that you would be punished for if you were playing against opponents of your skill level. This very quickly leads to ingraining bad habits that can be difficult to unlearn later. Because of this, while it's absolutely fine to play casual game modes, play different games, or play with your friend, if you want to improve quickly, it's pretty important to try and focus mostly on playing as challenging and competitively as you can when you're practicing. So now you know that you need a challenge, but which challenge exactly is going to help you improve as quickly as possible? Well, there's a variety of things we could focus on. Think of aim, movement, positioning, awareness, or game sense, for example. All of those could be improved, and some are probably already better than others. In an upcoming episode, we're going to delve specifically into how you identify what you should practice for the day and how you practice all of those things properly. But for now, we're going to split it into 3 broad categories. First off, for players that are newer to the FPS genre, the first thing I would recommend is try to focus on building fundamental mechanics and familiarizing yourself with the game that you're trying to get better at. For a newer player like that, simple drills, 1v1s and hot dropping in pubs can provide a pretty great scenario to achieve that short-term goal, because there isn't quite the pressure or level of difficulty that's going to overwhelm you. For a player like that, grinding ranked won't really maximize the time that you spend building mechanics or familiarity with gunfights. You'll spend a lot of time looting and surviving and trying to figure stuff out. That's a lot more difficult if all of the enemy teams are coordinated. So find a challenge that fits you. For a player that's a little more familiar with the genre and has a more close to average or slightly above average skill level, you want to identify specifically which skills you need to improve to eventually reach your end goal, and which of those you should address first. Now, practicing any specific skill is worthwhile, but again, diminishing returns apply. To improve as quickly as possible, we'll generally want to focus on your worst skills, unless there's a skill that specifically has high impact on your goal. If you're trying to get into scrims, then working on your aim is not going to be nearly as impactful as learning some macro knowledge of the game if you're going to have to IGL. At this point, you're also looking to start identifying common mistakes and patterns in your games that might solidify into bad habits if not addressed correctly. You're looking to fix a mistake at least every day. At this point, depending on how competitive your goal is, this is where VOD reviews are generally very helpful, but this is a topic that we'll cover in some more depth soon. Now, for the veteran players, this is a group where it's most important to find a challenge that is meaningful enough that it avoids autopiloting. Generally, for players in this category, ranked or scrims, depending on their goal, are recommended as primary focus for their playtime. Players of this caliber generally don't need to spend a lot of time working on their aim anymore, but they are looking to find better players that will punish them for mistakes that the average casual player might not see. Aside from wanting to play these game modes to play against better players, you should also have a deep enough understanding of the game and how to play it properly that you understand and can evaluate choices made by better players or even just other good players. At this stage, being in that competitive environment is incredibly helpful for allowing you to learn from playing against, with, or just watching good players. Now that you can understand what they're doing and you're close enough in skill level to imitate a lot of the actions that they're performing, you want to see if there's something that you can learn from them. You want to learn from those that traveled the path before you so that you can get to where they are more efficiently. So now we've got a seemingly unreachable goal, you've dedicated time to it, and you want to start improving by working on one skill a day. If you'd like to see how we do that, join me on Friday for the next session. If you have any lingering questions or just want to nerd out with me, find me on Twitter, Discord or Twitch, all of which are linked below. I hope this was helpful. Peace.